want to welcome everybody to the Elders of Zionism podcast. You could find us at eldersofzionism.com. I encourage everybody to go there, give us that 5-star review wherever you find us, and subscribe. It's extremely helpful. And this message goes explicitly out to our listeners from the Daily Cheat Sheet. I love that you're still downloading the show. We have been uploading the Elders of Zionism to the Daily Cheat Sheet, trying to encourage people to migrate. I understand it's hard to migrate. Go on. It's Apple. These places could be a little difficult, a little tricky.
Oh yeah, they don't make any of this easy. The Appalachian Trail is something that showed us that migration sometimes can be hard.
So for the people that are listening on the Daily Cheat Sheet, please go to the eldersofzionism.com or the Elders of Zionism on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you've been listening to us, go there. And so we welcome you.
Yeah, and we appreciate you continuing to listen to the show as we've shifted a bit of focus or shifted our perspective. But we would love it if you could come over there and show the world what our numbers really look like.
And even with that being said, our Rumble numbers have been spectacular. We have to thank both Turbo and David for that. So thank you. I'm here with Guy Goldstein and Golan, and
Hello.
It's good to see both of you. And we wanted to do a show. This show wasn't today any plans on discussing the Iran situation. We had planned on a whole different format for today's show, but it really is the elephant in the room right now. I don't know much more how better to describe that than it is the elephant in the room. What I find absolutely amazing is for the longest time, Iran has denied any connections, right, with Hezbollah, with the Houthis. They've never openly come out and said, we give them money, this is it. But right now, Golan, they're explicitly saying they're moving their own goalposts of insanity and saying, well, if you attack Lebanon, you attack us. Now the Houthis are attacking Israel. If you attack the Houthis, you're attacking us. They're openly coming out and saying, we are their masters.
Well, this is, by the way, it's all kind of semantic word games anyway, because when you have a situation where, and by the way, the media is part of this too, when you have a situation where Hezbollah, regardless of whatever ceasefire anyone is pretending has been in place, Hezbollah has never stopped launching rockets into civilian centers in Israel. So, and of course they were like, no, we have to separate out. Lebanon is separate from Iran, even though the people, it's not Lebanon that is launching rockets. It is an Iranian proxy known as Hezbollah that is in Lebanon, basically this interloper that has taken over half the country over there. And they're just launching rocket after rocket after rocket because it's not part of the ceasefire. And then the media says Israel launches rockets into Lebanon or starts a war with Lebanon, and they leave out the person that it's actually against. This is all semantic nonsense, in the same way that Iran pretending that they're going to protect their allies or their proxies or whatever word they want to use, while it's just Iranian-trained, Iranian-financed terrorists that just happen to be sitting in another location.
Well said. And Guy, I brought up that we really had planned something totally different, and we will get to that next week. We have a great guest lined up for Wednesday. It's interesting that the media, and even Trump in a sense, is shaping this narrative that we're attacking, that Israel's attacking Lebanon, Israel's attacking Beirut, and even Lebanon is coming out and saying, we want nothing to do with Hezbollah. Like we want the separation of, obviously it's not church and state, but of the demented and the rest of us, the barbarians and the rest of us. And even when Lebanon says it, people don't pick up on what Lebanon is saying.
And at the same time, what you find is that this is the situation with the entire Middle East, except for Israel. Right? The entire region is filled with sort of countries that don't really function like countries, filled with militias that are proxies of sometimes other countries, sometimes religious groups, sometimes some combination of the two, none of which are ever accountable and all of which can be denied. So, for example, for years, Iran hasn't taken responsibility for Hezbollah, but Lebanon has said, it's not us, it's Hezbollah. The Palestinians would say, it's not us, it's Hamas, it's the PLO, it's the PFLP, it's the DFLP. Right? They keep manufacturing more and more of these plausible deniabilities where in actual
Can we add to it that they have a media arm and a military arm?
Let's go beyond that. Let's go to the fact that Hamas is the dominant political organization in the Palestinian world. Hezbollah has about 50 seats in the Lebanese parliament, right? So when Lebanon says it's not us, it's like, but it is, like half our parliament.
But guy,
But it's not us.
the best way for people to understand it, they're their shell companies, right? They're their offshore bank accounts, except instead of shell companies and bank accounts, they're their armies. Just so people could understand it
And the interesting thing you see when you want to understand how corrupt the world is, whether it's the UN or the international media or even the political discussion with allies, is when you look at the settler violence narrative. And when you look at the way that any malicious activity committed by any Jew anywhere in the world is immediately attributed to Israel, and Israel has to take responsibility, and it's Israel's fault, and Israel is accountable and to blame and has to pay reparations. And at the same time, all of these other actors, all of whom have direct affiliations with all of these other states, never get looked at because you can't possibly blame all of the people because that would be collective punishment. You can't
Right. It's always the
ask
Israelis
a
and the
country to be
Jews, by the
accountable for
way,
its own militia.
right? It's the Jews as well. You
Mhm.
and I had a conversation with another group of people, and one of them, I mentioned this on True Social not long ago. One of them said, "This Jew was just caught stealing money from this celebrity. Man, we can't be doing this sort of thing. It makes us look bad." And you were like, and I'll never forget your response. You said, "No, we didn't steal money. We aren't doing anything. This one random a-hole did something. And then suddenly, because we're Jews, or like you're pointing out, because we're Israelis, every single Jew now has to kowtow for it, apologize for it,
Right.
pretend like
And
we're
let's
part of the
clarify, it's because you
conspiracy."
two are Israelis. I
Right.
am
But
You're
I
Jewish.
mean,
just a Jew.
what I'm saying is, in general, the Jews
Yeah.
and the Israelis are always asked to do this sort of thing, but there's no separate. In fact, the only time the media and all these grifters want to combine everyone together is when they want to make America or Israel look bad. So the media
Mhm.
keeps saying, for instance, we're at war with Iran. Sorry, no, that's beyond lazy. That's like saying, America and Taliban are the same thing. It's like, no, wait a second. These are two entirely different things. The conflict is with the regime, right? The IRGC. There are 90 million people trapped underneath that called the Persians or the Iranians. That distinction matters. So the only time they want to flatten everything is when they're trying to say, hey, we're with you, Iranian people. America shouldn't be fighting you. What? That's not who we're fighting. They want the IRGC destroyed.
They're back in the streets, by the way. I think one thing that we should cover before we move on, just with regards to this, is understanding the nature and the origin of proxy warfare, right? Proxy warfare is basically a political maneuver that was invented after World War II, for the most part, in order to avoid mutually assured destruction, because there were now there was a multipolar world or a bipolar world with nuclear powers at the head of each, and they were in conflict. And so in order for the United States and Russia to fight the Cold War without having to risk nuclear fallout, they said, we're going to have our battles by letting the Egyptians and the Syrians fight with the Israelis, knowing who's backing whom,
Right.
because we can sort out our issues there and then no one has to go nuclear. Right? The Iranian regime, the Islamic regime of Iran, understood how to use proxy warfare to become completely unaccountable for their actions in the world. And what they have done with that is destroy multiple countries, not just Israel, right? On the path to Israel, they destroyed Iraq, they've destroyed Syria, they've destroyed Lebanon. Those used to be real countries. And yes, Saddam Hussein was bad, but Saddam Hussein was a bad guy that was ruling a real country, right?
It's
Yes,
interesting you
Assad
say
was.
that, though. It's interesting you say that because it's something I often bring up about that region. It's something that needs to be spoken about the Shah, just so people could understand. The reason it was a massive mistake was because, I mean, let's just be honest. It's like if you run the countries over there, you're a zookeeper, and a zookeeper isn't, for the most part, cuddling. I know you get those cute AI or cute videos online of the zookeeper hugging the lion. That's the exception to the rule. Okay, most people aren't hugging the lions, and that's what those countries are filled with: a bunch of lions and animals
Well, and,
that you just
and let's be honest. That zookeeper who's cuddling the lion knows full well that given the opportunity, the lion will eat them. They
Correct.
understand that they are playing a game and putting on a show by cuddling the lion because the
yeah.
lion is a lion and it has one goal, and that's to eat you.
Well said. And go on. I want to move on just a slight bit of, one of the things we keep on seeing is this idea of time, right? That there needs to be time. And President Trump brought this up last night when he said this has been going on for 57 years.
3,000 years.
The bigger point is they keep on saying, give it time. The problem is, and this is the way Iran works, is if China works, Russia works, any country that's a dictatorship can work on time because they don't have elections. If they do, they're not free and fair.
Right.
And the people are there for 30 some odd years. So just for perspective, people could say, well, what about Israel? Well, Bennett beat Bibi Netanyahu. So it's not like Bibi has been there straight this whole time. There wasn't it. So when people say give it time, the Israeli government could change in 4 months. The American government in 2.5 years will change for sure. So we can't this time thing go on is not time is not on our side as far as this goes. Time will always be on their side.
Well, those people who say, just give it time, just give it time. And we have that conversation a lot. We hear people say that sort of thing a lot, are forgetting that this is a group of people that they always think in centuries. They think in massive chunks of time that most people can't even fathom. Most people they've heard the word century, and it seems like a lot of time, but they're not going to plan something for a century from now because their brain can't even wrap their mind around the concept. So whereas we Americans, for instance, we think in election cycles sometimes even less than that. Some people can't think about what's going on except for what's happening next week. They think about, let me lay a best laid plan here, and in a month, if I can wait that long, then it'll finally pay off. Where they're like, and they say it out loud. I talk about it all the time. There's FBI wiretaps of the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE literally speaking about this, where they're like, little by little, might take decades, it might take centuries, but we will eventually convince them to elect us to office, like in New York, for instance. I'm just using an example, and or in London, and little by little, we will take over all of their cities, and we will slowly put ourselves into a position where, at a Harvard graduation, they're going to be singing the Quran verses, and it's going to be normalized. And on college campuses, when they're doing encampments, everyone's going to pray to Allah, and it's going to be totally normal, and everyone's going to forget who the terrorists have been for the last 3,000 years and start cheering on the terrorists. And if you're for human rights, you're going to be pro-terrorist, and you're going to forget all of that because time is the great equalizer, especially when you have tools like social media and a corrupt media and all the rest that you're able to slowly but surely change opinions.
Well said. Listen, major props and respect for President Trump. I've written about his foreign policy. Does anybody really believe that we can negotiate with the Ayatollah or who's ever running Iran right now? And as I said to you on the phone last night, and I really just so people understand this, I used to say to people, how do you negotiate with people that live in caves? Do you offer them another other cave, a bigger and brighter cave? They're living in caves. So how do you negotiate with people that believe 72 virgins? What do you offer them, 72 live virgins? Or you say, no, I mean, we spoke to somebody, you'll get, 144 virgins when you die. I mean, it's just such a weird concept.
Which is what makes it so brilliantly evil, by the way.
Right. That's exactly right. So, Guy, as President Trump keeps on saying, I need a few more days to negotiate. I think the deal is going to be coming down the pike. Listen, it's great that he wants that. I think it's an amazing thing that Trump doesn't like to see death. He doesn't want to see destruction. If he did, he could have done what Obama did. He could have done what Clinton did with Kosovo. And obviously, I'm referring to Obama with Libya, and destroy their infrastructure. He didn't do it. The only way negotiations work is if there's an armed faction in Iran that could actually have an uprising.
And I think, again, the part of the thing that I think is left out of the conversation about the negotiation is that the Iranians aren't just at the table with President Trump, right? There is another guy at the table. They call him Allah or Muhammad or whoever you want to call him, who's making a much better offer than we can ever make. Right?
No matter what offer we make.
Right. Nothing that we offer can compete with paradise, 72 virgins, and eternal reward. And there is a fundamentalist stream within Islam that is who the Islamic regime are. Their vision of the world is an end of days, the return of the Mahdi, the return of the 12th Imam. You can't offer them more than paradise. You can't offer them more than every dream, the Messiah and every dream they've ever dreamt and every prayer they've ever prayed. Because that's what the other guy that you're not hearing at the table is offering. Now, what's really interesting about Iran is there's a third person at the table. And we're going to call that Reza Pahlavi right now. Right? That's the Iranian people. The Iranian people aren't convinced by the devil. They aren't convinced by the person offering them eternal reward for just killing themselves and everybody else. But we're not talking to them. Instead, we're talking to the person that's never going to buy what we're offering. We're not talking to the other factions. Well, we might be. We don't know. Right?
Don't know.
But we're playing this game, trying to buy time from people for whom time is irrelevant, while we're on a clock, while they're being promised something that we can never live up to. And so even if we get a deal from them, eventually the temptation of the person saying, what about the virgins? What about paradise? What about the Messiah? And what about eternal reward? That's still going to trump it.
Right. And think about it this way too. Every time you hear Trump say, or anybody say, let's give it a few more months. Judah, you and I were going back and forth with some people on Truth Social who are really good people thinking this through, thinking, let's give it a little more time. There's a grand plan, et cetera. And I just want to ask this question to everybody who asks that question. Who benefits from a delay? Right? Think about this, because in a democracy, time is expensive. Like you said, we have presidential cycles, 4 years of president's out, not even 4 years at this point. And if the Democrats get into office, that means Maher Bitar is running foreign policy for the United States.
For Iran.
But it's important to say, for the United States, Maher Bitar, for those who don't know, is not an Iranian who in the government of the IRGC. He is, thanks to Obama and then thanks to Biden, and it would have been thanks to Kamala and thanks to whoever it is going to be if it's the Democrats in the White House, is an American who was one of the founders at SJP, who is vehemently pro-terrorist. And
you say that all the time, and remember, people don't always.
SJP is Students for Justice in Palestine. It is a terrorist organization that is financed through Hamas and had signs talking about October 7th before October 7th happened. Okay, that's Maher Bitar. And right now, the Democrats have said if we get back in the White House, he is running foreign policy for the White House. So who benefits from a delay? Because in a revolutionary dictatorship, time is an asset on their side. They don't have to win today. They don't have to win tomorrow. They don't even have to win next year. They just have to outlast Trump.
And I want to just put a pin in something here, because it's really important to say who benefits from a delay now. Because there was a time in this conflict where we, America, the allies, the people on the side of good in this war, and there is a clear good and evil in this war, were benefiting from the delay. While America was bringing in the armada, while the ships were coming in, while the weapons were being moved around and defenses were being deployed, that delay served America's interest. The difference is now the armada is in place, now the defenses are in place, now the troops are in place, and every single day that we wait, not only does it cost $1 billion, which people don't like, I can understand why, but it exhausts the troops, it adds wear and tear to the equipment, it reduces it increases pressure from the world, it creates pressures on the global market, which in turn create political pressures on the United States. Right now, we have nothing to gain from any further delay. We have been delaying without any benefit, while the other side has been rearming, has been receiving armaments from China, has been receiving armaments from Russia, apparently has been receiving armaments from Pakistan, who was supposed to be a neutral broker, right? There was a time when we were using time sensibly by using delays to our advantage. Now it's going to cost us money, it's going to cost us credibility, and it's going to cost us the lives of Israeli and American men and women.
And from that perspective, the clock is
Bahrainis and Emiratis and all the other Arabs in the region.
But from that perspective, the clock itself is not just part of the battlefield; it is part of their arsenal, their weaponry. Because if the regime's objective is to survive, which it is, and to continue doing what they're doing, get that caliphate, take out the West, etc., every day it survives is a day it hasn't lost. And if survival is the goal, delay isn't a side effect of the strategy. The delay is the strategy. So when everyone's like, let's give it a second and see, you're giving them points on the board.
Yeah, I want to tell you guys something interesting because listen, to the people that are listening to the show. We are very active on Truth Social. We do have a much bigger following there. We might be bigger on X if we had a bigger following over there. Although I'm always a little scared of X, and we are on X. We are on Instagram. We're on every social you could find. I encourage everybody to go look at Guy's Substack. It's a Guy thing, and go on Substack and our Substack, and where you can find this all over at the Elders of Zionism.com. But somebody said to me last night, Colin, and anybody that follows me knows that I am extremely careful in when I decide to critique, that my critiques don't just come willy-nilly. And yesterday, I finally, as you saw the post before I sent them, I should have sent the other one. There was one post I wanted to put out before, maybe because I could give you exactly people's responses, but in one
You
of them,
always seem
somebody,
to know what the responses are going to be before you get them.
yeah, that's exactly right. And the response was the whole. I was going to respond. Yeah, I know it's 4D, ADD chess, and we don't know what's going behind the scenes. And I've been hearing that from people for a year and a half with every single thing, with the DOJ going after people.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. That can't be your go-to answer. By the time you get done with that, it'll be 2028. So with that being said, somebody said, why do you have, pretty much like, wait till this, let's see what happens. And I said to them, did you respond to Tucker Carlson like this? Did you respond to Megyn Kelly? Did you respond to, and they were like, no. I just sort of I didn't want to amplify them. So I was like, so you specifically chose my post to come out and say, don't bite, give it time. The one person that's not saying abandon ship.
You didn't even bite, by the way, just to let everybody know what his post was he, Judah happens to be a big fan of President Trump, voted for him and all the rest. And he said, I still support you. I still want America to succeed under you. And I still think you're better than the alternative. And I think you're making a mistake here. Is that a bite?
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. And Guy, I did it as respectfully as possible. And I say again, these people will never confront the people that are wrong all the time. They will never confront, and this goes to both parties. Imagine if you confronted the person that gave you the bad weather report every day. I mean, crazy concept, and which is something we're going to talk about in a few minutes when it
Do you
comes
mean
to
the bad as in the weather is bad, or do you mean wrong about the weather?
wrong.
Yeah.
Well, usually, I mean, you're not complaining about the weather unless it's
Right.
bad. Right. If they said to you it's going to be, 3 degrees outside, bundle up, and you walked outside and it was 90, you'd be like, well, the weatherman's an idiot, but it's a really nice day outside. And Guy, I just found it to be one of those very interesting things that this cultist, tribalist type of thing, it's still okay to call balls and strikes. And you're right. I don't know what's going on in President Trump's mind. I don't know what's going behind the scenes. I do know this, that we discussed this the other day. There are people that take him figuratively and there are people that take him literally. Now, obviously, we often take him figuratively. The problem is when you're Kuwait and your airport is destroyed and people are killed, or you're Israel, or you're God, I'm not blanking on the name. You're Azerbaijan and you're being attacked, and you're Israel and you have the guns pointed at you. It's very difficult to do the figurative and literal when those things are actually, the guns are pointed at your face. So when you're those places and you have been attacked, you have been murdered, you have been slaughtered, and then somebody says, it's still a ceasefire, moderate, you're like, you don't know what to make of it. So I don't blame people.
And I think more than that, you're also not understanding that language and culture don't translate in the same way. And
Yeah, I have a hard time understanding you.
Right, that's right. And so one of the big challenges that you see is that all of the things that are being done might make sense and might be very clever in traditional Western diplomacy. But traditional Western diplomacy is not the same as Arab diplomacy, right? And Arab diplomacy already has sophisticated layers of nuance in the way that people say things. I think Moti Kedar always says that when it comes to speaking Arabic, you have to be able to hear what people say, to hear what they mean, and to hear what they don't say all at the same time. And one of the big risks that we're facing as this drags on is that the messaging that we think that we're messaging is not the messaging that we're actually messaging.
Right.
Right. So, for example, when Iran fires rockets at Israel and President Trump responds by saying, I'm going to call Netanyahu and tell him not to respond. That's not a show of, that's not a show of strength. Even when he says, I make the decisions, not Netanyahu, that's a show of weakness. Because not only does it show that when an enemy attacks your ally, you side with the enemy or you back down immediately, but it also shows that you can't even control the people that you say that you're controlling. And
Right.
with all due respect to President Trump, and you know that I've got plenty of respect for him and I appreciate a lot of what he's done. At the end of the day, Israel is a sovereign nation that has 10 million citizens who need to be defended from a whole bunch of people in the neighborhood who are actively trying to kill us. And if it comes down to it, the same way that Golda did, the same way that Ben Gurion did, the same way that Begin did, eventually Israel is going to have to tell its allies, thank you, we appreciate your concern, we appreciate everything you've done with us and up to this point, but we have a country to save. And that's where we are. We're at a point where Israel has been asked for more than 2 years, in the case of Lebanon, to just wait and we'll figure it out. We'll see if we can talk this out. Dozens of Israelis have died as a result. Israel has been asked to wait for months with the Iran situation. Tens of ballistic missiles were being fired on Israel. And again, everybody talks about the fact that we're 2 weeks away from concluding the war with Iran, from destroying their infrastructure, from taking out the things that need to be taken out to actually cripple the country. But those 2 weeks don't help if you keep waiting for them. And in the meantime,
Listen, you're 100%.
they've rearmed their launchers. They're now more capable than they were 8 weeks ago. And when we have to go back in, which we will have to do, it's going to be much harder.
Not to mention, let's not forget, they've again, go on, 100% figured out a way to manipulate the algorithms, fight the social media and online wars even better than they did during Gaza. So it's like, this is not a dummy enemy. Okay, this is I know none of us think that, but I think there are a lot of people out there that think we're fighting idiots.
Look, it's one of the most dangerous assumptions of the current age that we're in. And the more we dig further into it with social media and AI and everything else, the more dangerous it becomes. The myth is social media rewards truth. I can't tell you how many people that I've spoken to offline, online, in groups, out of groups, Jews, not Jews, that say eventually the truth will win out. Just be patient, more with the just being patient thing. Social media, all of these things, AI, it doesn't reward truth. If you want to think they reward truth, go read Wikipedia every once in a while and see how much truth you find there, which is we're all contributing. And then there's a system to make sure that the information isn't inaccurate. No, it's all inaccurate half the time. It rewards engagement. All of it does. Once you get that, once you understand why authoritarian regimes and terrorist organizations and propaganda networks, regardless of where they are in the world, how they've all become so effective online. It's not just bot farms. It's not just that they figured out how to, get their bots to like comment 20 times on a post. They didn't just beat the algorithm. They studied it. In some cases, like with their allies in China, they developed it. But they figured out something that Western institutions have not figured out. Outrage, and we've said it 1,000 times on this show, outrage spreads faster than nuance, period. Emotion spreads faster than facts. Victimhood spreads faster than accountability. That's why you can see a group of people get attacked, get raped, get murdered, get kidnapped, get dismembered, get tortured, and then that group of people gets attacked because of the way the algorithm is already skewed in favor of terrorists. This is not theoretical. We are in the red alert zone online, and we need to do something about it beyond just telling people this. Again, we don't
go
have to
on. I know you get really frustrated with this.
It's so frustrating.
But I just want to explain, Guy. I think that at its most cellular level, and this is something that I've brought up before, is what Golan is saying is history is written by the victors, which is the biggest lie that's ever been told, because we lost the university systems. So we lost academia, and so please don't tell me history is written by the victors, because Republicans might have historically won at certain points, but they didn't win that battlefield, and that is the battlefield that is the etymology of social media in a sense, right? So we lost that. Every time you hear somebody come out and opine or pull a Barack Obama and think this is a metaphysic, you could this is a game of Risk that he's playing, or it's some like term paper he's writing. This is all theater of the absurd.
And I think that there is something really interesting in that particular expression to explore, because I think what we're seeing now in real time is that, first of all, history is never written. History is constantly being written. Right. Second of all, history isn't written by the victors, because that assumes that history is a past concept. History is controlled by the victorious. He who controls history controls the future. Or, well, he who controls the past controls the future. So what you see that happened in academia was, while we were busy winning the Cold War, the other side conquered history, and they've rewritten our history in such a way that it's completely undermined the foundations of our civilization, right? And so history is a forward-looking tool as much as it's a backwards-looking tool. And it may be that in the when the Romans were the only ones that documented their victories and the other empires were crushed, maybe if in that period history was written by the victors, but I suspect that even then part of it was propaganda that was designed to ensure the ongoing and continuing victory of the Roman Empire, and not just because they'd already won.
Well said. And listen, I think we've spoken about this enough. Is Israel at this moment and Iran have said they're stopped lobbing missiles at each other. I love even how I say it, how at each other. That it
Can I
was it
can I
was
point something
Iran.
out with this, by the
Yeah.
way, just real quick before you move on from it, because I think it's so unbelievably dishonest when the media says Israel and Iran are trading attacks or lobbing missiles at each
Yeah,
other.
100%.
Doesn't tell you who started shooting, doesn't tell you why they're shooting, doesn't tell you what the targets. It just flattens the entire story into some BS headline that is not true.
I
It's
think that's what
remarkable.
bothered me. I think
Well,
that's what got
of
me with the
course, because look,
That's what got me though with the Trump thing yesterday. Why I
right.
posted it
This is what I was
was
going to say,
because
is that it bothers me less that the media is saying it, because the media we know is dishonest, and we know the media is going to repeat the terrorist propaganda. But when it starts to filter down into our leaders repeating the same thing, and we hear when Hezbollah fires rockets into Israeli towns, it's described as like cross-border tensions, or when Israel responds, it's an escalation. All of these little terms that are like needling things away, but it's repeated by our leaders. That's when it gets dangerous.
well said. And I want to move on a little bit. And we are the elders of Zionism. And as Guy really aptly put, and I always have this through line running through my head, obviously go on being in the film industry, and all of us in a sense, hopefully being in the film industry very soon, is the word through line. And Guy always says, we're on the offense. And I live in California. I live in Los Angeles County, which I, learned, through Ben Stein, is actually not the whole Los Angeles County. It's, there are a lot of people that are free from people like Karen Bass, but there are a lot of people like me that are not free from Karen Bass. And what we're witnessing is a lot of Democrats voted for Spencer Pratt guy. A lot of them did. A lot of them thought a few nights ago Spencer Pratt was in second place in what is known as a jungle primary. The school board woman pretty much conceded the other night. Well, wait for it. There were still millions of ballots that haven't been counted. They have until, I believe, July 6th to count all of the ballots. Now, I wonder if those Democrats that voted for Spencer Pratt, who ran as a Republican, are going to come out and say, there's something really off here. There is something really off here, that with every ballot dump, somehow 90% or 80% of the votes go to the Democrat. This isn't like, Guy, it's like one of those things. It's like at a certain point, there's every statistical impossibility.
Absolutely. And I still remember watching the F curve, when I was confidently telling people in 2020, look, Trump got reelected. I told you this is what was going to
I
happen.
told Ben Stein that night. This is a famous story. This is a story with Ben. And Golan knows this. He called me at 10 o'clock that night, and he said to me, "We won." And I said, "The second they stopped counting, Guy," I said this to him on the phone, "We haven't won yet. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, Ben, just wait. And we should have listened to them at the time, right? Nobody listened to them because they told us beforehand. They told us exactly, don't trust election night count. The mail-in ballots have not been counted yet, so don't listen.
The credibility of elections at the moment is in a very difficult place, whether or not there is provable fraud or a level of provable fraud. The fraud doesn't actually matter. The trust is what makes an election work. And the minute, and that in the United States, that is at a point where it is critical. It is in critical condition. It is on life support. Once that trust is lost for good, you don't get it back. This is one of the things that Reagan talks about. That it only ever takes one generation to lose freedom, but it takes 100 years to win it back, if ever.
Right.
I think no people that have ever lost freedom have ever managed to win it back. And that's where things are with the United States. And I think, and I was having a conversation with my mother this afternoon because I haven't told a family story in a while. I think I've ever told her my mum's story, but here we are. Because she saw an article about the fact that there was an American NGO that was paying for Israeli expatriates to fly back to vote in the Israeli election, because the Israeli election requires on-site voting with voter ID verified against multiple people who will verify it. So just to give you an idea of how Israelis vote, there is a specific physical location that's associated with where you live, which is the only place you're allowed to vote in the world. If you're not on that list, you don't get to vote there.
I've been
When
asked
you go there,
multiple times if I'm going back to vote for specifically that
when
purpose.
you go there, there is a representative of each of the major parties that has a list of all of the people. You have to pass them the ID, and every one of those people cross-validates that you're the same person as the ID by checking your ID number against your name, against your address. That could be 3 people, it could be 5 people, depending on how many people are there. It's never less than 3. You then take your ballot, put it in a box. By the next morning, we know who's won. There's no mail-in votes. There's no question as to the legitimacy of the votes. There's no funny business. That's how. Now, the fact that my mother called me to say, did you hear that there's an NGO flying in expats who ostensibly are going to vote in one particular direction for election day and then shuttling them from the airport to the voting stations in order to cast the votes ostensibly against the current prime minister? And to Israelis, even to people who don't support Benjamin Netanyahu, that feels outrageous. It feels outrageous because that is a form of election fraud from our perspective. And understand, the people that are being flown in are still Israeli.
Yeah,
But
isn't that funny? That's the level of election fraud. To qualify as election fraud in Israel, you have a bunch of people going physically with ID to a ballot location, but this is our level in Israel of what is legitimate.
Right. And so that outrage, my response was, yeah, we know about this. This is how, but again, it's an American NGO undermining the trust of the Israeli election, because that's the way that the NGO infrastructure works. It gets power by bending the rules. Is it legal for someone to fly Israelis in to cast their votes? Technically, yes. Does it violate the fundamentals of the trust that we place in the election system? Most definitely. And it's not a coincidence that it's an American NGO doing it, because that's the way that America's election system has been manipulated, not in a way that is specifically fraud, but in a way that has undermined the credibility of the system and the trust of the voters, to the point that eventually you're going to have people in the streets with guns.
Listen, very well said. And, Golan, the Supreme Court is going to be hearing this case. And obviously, this is one of those things where, Democrats are going to, go berserk when the Supreme Court ruling comes out with their ruling that basically will say you have to have everything by election, by election day. I mean, this is pure insanity. I mean, as Elon Musk has brought out, you look at places like, where was it, India or Pakistan, where I think it was India. No, it was Pakistan, where he brought up they have 300 some odd million, however many people that live there, and they count it in a day.
Yeah.
California, 10 million. It takes a month and a half to vote. And this is like one of those things that if I'm President Trump right now, I bring the DOJ, I cut off all funding. Just so people understand that the election board in Los Angeles County gets $340 million a year. Okay. That's their operating budget. I want to exactly know where that money is going.
Well,
I
don't
really,
forget, very rarely do they ever know where any of their money is going. Look at the light rail system, look at the homelessness crisis. The audits have not been able to figure out where any of that money went. So good luck. But I do want to look at this because we are the elders of Zionism. I want to look at this through the prism of the Jews for a moment. Okay, because Guy brought up something really important is it's not necessarily doesn't mean there's corruption, doesn't mean that someone's necessarily cheating, but trust. Trust is what's really important here. And I'll just say I don't want to speak just for myself. I think many Jews feel this way, but one of the reasons why Jews are skeptical of institutions is that Jewish history is in many ways the history of being told, trust us, the system is fair, right? Whether that was, for thousands of years, us being told, hey, you don't have Israel, but you're good because the king's got you, or the church has got you, or the courts have got you, or the university, or the media, or whatever it is. We were always told this. Everything was okay. And those are the exact institutions that eventually turned around, blamed the Jews for society's problems, and then eventually either purged the Jews, killed the Jews, or in some way shunned the Jews. And that's why Israel is so important. And that's why when we look at any of these systems where people tell us, just trust us. By the way, aren't we in a world where we were told to question everything, question the police, question the government, question all of this stuff? When it was Trump winning over Kamala, we were told question the elections, question the outcomes.
well,
And
especially
now,
Hillary.
well,
Hillary,
sure, but I don't think it's a bad thing to say don't necessarily trust your masters with everything that you're being told.
Whatever
It's
happened to
okay to
trust
question
but
things.
verify?
Absolutely, that's my point.
whatever happened to it's your body. It's your body, your choice, except for when it became to COVID and the shots.
But this is, Judah, to your point, the Jewish experience teaches something simple, and I think everyone can learn from it. Transparency is better than trust. Accountability is better than promises. So let us know that everything's cool, and then show us.
Right.
Show us how that worked. Show us how after Spencer Pratt was up and then down, and then suddenly millions more ballots haven't been counted yet. We could put a man on the moon and we can transfer trillions of dollars on Bitcoin in 10 seconds, but counting votes takes weeks. Like, let us know why. Show us the process, and then there's no questions being asked.
Yeah, that would be great. I got to say, that might be one of the best points you've ever made. I'm dead serious, by the way. It's one of the best points you've ever made. Show us the process.
I don't think it takes a genius to ask for it.
No, but not many people do.
But
I think,
by the way,
I think,
that also goes
again,
back to what you were saying about the algorithms earlier. Show us the algorithm, right?
yeah.
This
Right.
entire thing, trust is a two-way street. The transparency and accountability is what creates trust. And throughout society, whether it's the algorithms, the politics, consistently what we see is the people aren't being asked to trust. They're being asked to believe.
Well said. I just want to say to people that are listening, obviously, trust but verify, all those things, but time is limited. Okay. It is not for us. Time is not limited to places like Iran and many places in that region. It's simply not. They go on a different time schedule than we do. Okay. I'm not referring to X-Files type stuff. I'm not referring to any of that stuff. I'm simply going to how they have lived and how they have survived. They look at time very differently. They look at family very differently. If any of us in America or Australia or anywhere were to lose our son or grandchildren or whatever it is because of a bomb, we'd be devastated. We'd be mourning. There, it's business as usual. They died a martyr. They're a hero. They look at this very differently, and people cannot really go on. They have a very hard time grasping that concept.
Absolutely. It's orc style thinking. Having just rewatched the Lord of the Rings trilogy in its extended fashion in the theater with my wife, it was amazing to watch just how much of a one-to-one they are with the orcs, and it's orc thinking. Yeah, we're all just cannon fodder, no problem. We'll make more, and they say this out loud, so don't come at
Well,
me. Go ahead and come at them for saying it.
Final thought, guy.
and I think something really important about this is we have to start understanding something. We are almost at the 25th anniversary of 9/11. For that entire period since 9/11, the West has been on the receiving end of a propaganda campaign to show us how Muslims are just like us, and Islam is just like us, and Arab culture is just like our culture. And there are 1,000 ways in which that's true. And what we've stopped looking at, which is what was important to Thomas Jefferson when he was looking at reading the Quran and trying to understand it, which is what was important when Richard the Lionheart had to go and fight the Crusades, right? Is how are we different? Because the ways that we're different are the reasons that we're seeing the conflict between these civilizations. It's not the ways that we're the same. The ways that we're the same are lovely and charming, and it's why I have lots of Arab friends and I can have a Muslim neighbor, and none of those things bother me. The ways that we're different have reached a point of civilizational crisis, and it's intentional.
And it's okay to disagree with people. It is okay. This idea that you can't disagree with people is a cult mentality. Okay. And none of us are members of cults. And you could disagree with people and still love them. I wish that concept still permeated and still was alive in our society, at least, because it's dead. It's absolutely dead. I want to thank everybody. You can find this everywhere at theeldersofzionism.com. I want to thank everybody that helps the show, everybody that contributes. I don't mean financially, everybody that just contributes with their ideas and their thoughts. Subscribe, like, follow. It's very helpful. Leave those comments as long as they're nice, of course. And I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.